When we hear the word yoga, most of us, we immediately picture someone doing physical postures, maybe some stretching. But that's really just the tip of the iceberg of a huge, ancient philosophical system. So today, we're going to go way beyond the mat and explore the real heart of yoga, this methodical effort to achieve a kind of perfection, all through the control of our own minds.
But first, let's start with a question I think we can all connect with. Have you ever tried to just sit still for even 60 seconds? And you notice your mind just will not cooperate, right? It's jumping from a thought to a worry to a plan to a memory. It's got a mind of its own. Well, this inner restlessness, this is the exact problem that yoga philosophy was designed to solve. So, what is actually going on inside our heads? In this first part, we're going to dive into the nature of this restless mind and figure out why yoga philosophy sees it as the fundamental challenge that every single one of us has to face.
Patanjali, who is basically the person who codified the yoga system, gives us this incredibly short and sweet definition right at the top of the Yoga Sutras. See, it's not about being flexible. It's not about being strong. At its absolute core, yoga is the discipline of restraining these mental modifications. Okay, so what in the world does that mean?
Well, the system calls the substance of our mind chitta. And I want you to think of it not as a solid thing, but more like mind stuff. Is this dynamic field that's constantly being changed and shaped and molded by everything we see, everything we hear, everything we experience. This constant state of flux, well, that's the source of all our mental chatter.
And Patanjali gets really specific. He identifies 5 main types of these mental modifications, or vrittis. A really great way to think of them is like waves rippling across the surface of your mind. And these waves are everything. The things you perceive correctly, the things you get wrong, your daydreams, your memories, even that blank state when you're in a deep sleep. According to yoga, it's the constant churning of these 5 activities that keeps us from ever feeling true inner peace.
Okay, so if our mind is this constantly changing, chaotic spectacle, who's the one watching it? This question brings us to the absolute core metaphysical idea in all of yoga philosophy. Yoga philosophy says there's this fundamental split in reality. On one side, you have Purusha. That's the true self. It's pure, it's unchanging consciousness, it's just the spectator. And on the other side, there's Prakriti, and that is literally everything else, all of nature, all of matter. But here's the kicker. Prakriti includes not just the world out there, but our bodies, our senses, and yes, even the very thoughts and emotions that make up our mind stuff.
And here it is. This is the root of the whole problem. The reason we suffer is because we get confused. We mix up who we truly are, that calm, unchanging seer, the Purusha, with the chaotic, ever-changing spectacle of our thoughts and emotions, which are just a part of Prakriti. We think to ourselves, I am angry, or I am anxious. But yoga philosophy says, no, you're the one observing the anger. You're the one watching the anxiety.
The Yoga Sutras have this absolutely brilliant analogy to explain how this confusion happens. It says, the mind is like a transparent crystal. Our pure consciousness, our Purusha, is naturally clear. But when a colored thought or emotion, like anger or sadness, is placed next to it, our awareness takes on that color and we forget we're the crystal. We think we're the color.
Now, this whole case of mistaken identity is fueled by what are called the 5 kleshas, or afflictions. It all starts with ignorance, not knowing our true nature. That leads to egoism, identifying with our mind. And that in turn creates attachment to things we enjoy, aversion to things we don't, and this deep, clinging fear of death. These are the ancient forces that keep us trapped.
So, if that's the problem, what's the solution? How do we actually start to untangle the seer from the spectacle? Well, thankfully, Patanjali doesn't just leave us with the problem. He gives us a really practical, step-by-step guide to get there.
This is the famous Eightfold Path, or Ashtanga Yoga, which literally means 8-limbed yoga. And it's not a random list. It's a progressive journey that moves you methodically from the outside in. You start with how you act in the world. Then you work on calming the body and breath. Then you systematically pull your senses inward. And finally, it all culminates in these deep states of mental absorption, moving from focused concentration to effortless meditation to a state of complete unity.
Now, here's something that often gets totally overlooked in modern yoga. The entire practice is built on an ethical foundation. Patanjali is crystal clear. Before you can even hope to still your mind, you first have to create a way of living that actually encourages inner peace. So the journey doesn't start on a yoga mat, it starts with how we treat other people and how we treat ourselves.
And here are those prerequisites.
The yamas are these universal moral guidelines, things like nonviolence and truthfulness. And the niyamas are personal practices, like contentment, self-discipline, and study. The idea is that together, they create a life with less turbulence, giving you a stable ground to stand on before you start the deeper internal work.
So, after walking this whole path, where do you end up? I mean, what's the ultimate goal of all this discipline? Well, it's a state of really profound liberation.
The goal is called kaivalya, which translates to something like absolute independence or isolation. And this isn't just about feeling calm or relaxed, it's a state where the mind stuff and all its little waves, all that stuff from Prakriti, it just becomes dormant because its job is done. Your consciousness is no longer tangled up in it, and it can finally rest in its own pure nature.
So really, kaivalya is the complete and final separation of the seer from the seen. That crystal of consciousness we talked about, it's no longer being colored by the thoughts and feelings placed next to it. It just remains in its pristine, transparent state, totally and completely independent of the mind's crazy, ever-changing show.
And the source text itself summarizes this ultimate state with such beautiful simplicity. After all the practice, after all the discipline, after you've restrained every single mental modification, then the seer stands in his own nature. That's it. Pure, uncolored, and absolutely free.
So, I'll leave you with a question to take with you. If this ultimate freedom that yoga describes is really liberation from the constant disturbance of our own minds, what's one small way, one simple practice that you could try to start finding little moments of that stillness in the middle of all the noise of your own everyday life?